so much for coming. My name's James. I'm going to be looking after you all tonight. This is my first Science in the Club that I've emceed. Who here is this their first Science in the Club? And who hasn't been to one of these before? All right, lots of new people. So, as a bit of an introduction, my name's James. I'm new to Armidale. I moved up here about 4 months ago from Sydney, so don't hold that against me. I got a job I'm a scientist over at UNE, and yeah, I'm loving Armidale. It's great. There's great events like this. There's lots of lovely armadillos, whatever you're called. And one thing I've noticed, you guys really like talking about the weather. I don't know, every time I meet a new person, I tell them I've just come up from Sydney. The first thing they say, oh, is it cold enough for you? And I gotta say, you talk up your winters a lot, but they're pretty underwhelming. I've experienced much colder winters, and you can blame it on global warming, but I read an article in the Telegraph that said it was a hoax, so I'm afraid you have no excuse, Armidale. You better do a better job. But tonight, we're going to be talking about, the theme of tonight is Toxic Australia. It's going to be about all things poisonous and venomous, but before we get started, just to let you know what's happening, we're going to have a special guest come up and talk. We're going to then have some science trivia, and after the trivia, it'll be your chance to ask our special guest any questions that you might have. Now, this event's being put on by the New England Northwest Regional Science Hub, so thanks to them. If you're interested in going to more of these events, they have a Facebook page where all of these events are put up, so check them out. We are also funded by Inspiring Australia. They deserve a shout out, and thanks so much to the Wicklow, I guess, for having us here. So, Science in the Club is all about sharing biology with beers and vinos with virology and lager with lithography. I don't know. It's science and it's in a club, so it's pretty casual. So get involved. Feel free to ask stupid questions. We'll get you to hold your questions to the end, and we'll have a good Q&A, but I'm going to stop talking and bring up our special guest, all the way here from sunny Cairns. We have the one and only Jamie Seymour. Jamie, why don't you come on up and join me? Big round of applause for Jamie.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
No worries. Now, Jamie, you're sort of my antithesis. I started life as a marine biologist and transferred into an entomologist. You've done things the other way around.
Not entirely. I am still an entomologist.
At heart?
Yes.
It's hard to let go of those little guys, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a millstone around your neck.
So you're a marine biologist. You head a Venom research unit.
Yep.
You're an academic at James Cook University.
Yes.
And you're a nutcase.
I can leave. I can go home. I don't have to come here to be abused. There are lots of other places in the world that will abuse me.
I don't think I need to convince people of that. Well, let's just show a little quick video of a day in your life to introduce the stuff you get up to.
Blue screen. This is great.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there we go.
Showcasing nature like never before. It's about discovery, adventure.
Whatever you do not get bitten.
It's known as the most venomous snake on the planet. Oh, look at that! Inspiration. Look at the number of people, all volunteers that turned up to save and to exciting. Research. Innovation. Collaboration. World firsts. We've never had the camera technology to actually do it at this level before. And sharing knowledge. that's me standing here filming this. This is Richard, my colleague working with you. Round of corn starfish. Videos apparently at night.
I wouldn't swap it for the world, to be honest. It's great fun. You run around and literally do whatever you want. Someone pays you to do it.
This is cool. This is like real science. This is the sort of stuff I get up in the morning for.
And that's the nature of science.
Jamie Seymour, everybody.
Yeah, that's what I do every single day.
Every single day. And that's your YouTube channel, The Nature of Science, that gives insight into the crazy things that you get up to as a scientist.
Yeah, I mean, so we have a YouTube channel called The Nature of Science, which is aimed at enthusing people about science.
All right, well...
Hopefully it does that.
And also, hopefully that's what tonight is about, and that's what you're going to do for us right now.
Absolutely. We'll try and put on a little talk show and convince you that most of the things we're talking about are venomous, not poisonous, and we'll stop you from using the term poisonous animals rather than venomous animals, but we'll sort that as we go along.
All right, I'm going to hand it over. Take it away, Jamie.
Thanks, James. Okay, let's see if we can screw up technology again. More blue screens? Okay, we want to go on from there. Okay, righto. So, what I want to chat about, and we're going to drop the volume on this, that's okay, because I'm going to try and project my voice as being a lecturer, but Australia, the most venomous place on the planet, okay? If you had to pick a continent anywhere in the world that had a higher density and a higher diversity of venomous animals, you couldn't go anywhere else apart from Australia. And if you wanted to pick a spot in Australia that had more of them than anywhere else in the world, you couldn't go any further than Cairns, which is where I'm from. Okay, so hence why I based in Cairns and while I'm working on those animals. But what I want to rephrase that is, when you look at that, if it's the most venomous place on the planet, why don't we drag people kicking and screaming or dead from the bushes all over the place? And in fact, when you talk to just about, well, the vast majority of people from overseas, that's the opinion that they have. Now, I've unceremoniously just hacked a music clip from the Scared Weird Little Guys, which explains, I think, what most overseas people think of Australia. So we're going to hit the little music button there, and hopefully it'll play.
Thanks very much. Well, the Australian Tourist Commission has asked us to come up with a song that we could perform overseas, a song to help bring the tourists back to Australia. That's right, so we focused on the wonderful wildlife and the fabulous fauna that Australia has to offer. Redback, funnel-web, blue-ringed octopus, taipan, tiger snake, adderbox, jellyfish, stonefish, and the poison thing that lives in a shell that's spicy when you pick it up. Come to Australia, you might accidentally get killed. Your life's constantly under threat. Have you been bitten yet? You've only got 3 minutes left before a massive coronary breakdown. Redback, funnel-web, blue-ringed octopus, taipan, tiger snake, adderbox, jellyfish, big shark, just waiting for you to go swimming at Bondi Beach. Come on, come to Australia, you might accidentally get killed. Your blood is bound to be spilled. With fear, your pants will be filled. You might accidentally get killed.
So, people, is there anybody in the audience that isn't an Australian? Is that what you thought before you got here? Yeah. See, I tell you, it's scary that most people, and from my point of view, I actually like to keep it that way, because that means you don't come over here and there's more of Australia for us. But the tourist industry has an issue with that. So what I want to try and do is change that mindset. So what I want to do is take a romp through the venomous kingdom in Australia, or a couple of those, give you an idea of what's going on and show you some positives to them rather than the negatives. Okay, and show you some of the science we're actually doing with it. So, if we start off somewhere and just try and put this into context. So if we look at venomous animals in Australia. So we have centipedes, which bite and are venomous and cause problems. Thankfully, the ones in Australia don't kill you, but they're up there. They cause a lot of pain, there's no doubt about it. We have big furry spiders. Okay, so that's my paw you can see over in the corner there, or my thumb. So this is a bloody big spider, okay, the size of a dinner plate. That particular one isn't venomous to humans, okay? It's one of the local ones up in Cairns. If you get bitten by that, it just feels like somebody's punched you in the arm with a blunt pen and it's come out the other side. You know, I've seen people come into the hospital with the spider still hanging off their finger, where it's come through their fingernail, okay? And you ask them, how did it bite you there? Standard reply, I stuck my finger in a hole. Yeah, I so don't have any sympathy for you at all now. So it doesn't hurt, doesn't seem to cause problems with humans apart from pain, but it'll kill your cat and dog in under 2 to 3 minutes. So this is the first indication that venoms act differently on different things. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. So of course we have the Sydney funnel web, the world's most venomous spider. Okay, we don't have it in Cairns, but you have it down here. Well, not here, but in Sydney. We went one better. We found a new species about 15 years ago up on the Mossman Tablelands, which is just north of Cairns, which we are reasonably convinced that it's more toxic than the Sydney funnel web. It just hasn't bitten anybody yet. So if you've got a PhD student that wants a project and wants to get bitten, send them north. It would be good. Of course, we then have snakes. So out of the top 13 venomous snakes in the world, we have the top 12. Okay, we missed out, and there is some argument, I would argue, that out of the top 13, we have the top 13, but the Americans want to jump in here, but we won't worry about them. Certainly the top 9, we rank, no problems at all. We're going to come back to that. We have the world's most venomous sea snakes, there's no doubt about that. This is an olive sea snake we're working with, so we've got those throughout the tropical waters. Of course, we have the world's most venomous fish. This one, it's not the world's most venomous, but we're going to come back and talk about the world's most venomous fish. This is a lionfish. And then, of course, we have the world's most venomous animal. Okay, we'll have an argument about this for about 2.5 seconds before I convince you it is the world's most venomous animal, but we'll talk about that later on. And, of course, it's present here in Australia. So this is just to start with. And when you look at it, out of all the venomous groups in the world, we have the most venomous in every single group bar one, which was the scorpions. And I don't know why. So our scorpions in Australia sting and hurt, that's it. Whereas the ones overseas kill you. And I don't know why. It's one of the things we're working with, but I haven't got a good answer for that one yet. So everything else, we're the top in the world. Yes, Australia ranks up there yet again. Blue-ringed octopus, of course we have those, most venomous octopus in the world. We sort of share that with Thailand and PNG and stuff, but we'll claim it as ours. Through to the world's most venomous monotreme or venomous mammal, okay, the platypus. I'm going to talk about that tonight. And as I said, scorpions, which we just missed out on. We get them, they sting, they hurt, but not like that one which kills you. Righto. And of course, when you think you've got it all under control, you go for a wander, we have ticks and they kill you as well. Okay? Forget this Lyme's disease, which we don't get in Australia. Okay? Yes, people in Australia apparently have Lyme disease. They haven't got it from Australian ticks, not as yet, but ours just kill you. Okay? And then just when you think you're safe, we have venomous plants. Okay, poison ivy, nah, don't worry about this thing. These are the stinging trees that we get up north, Dendrocnites, and they hurt. I mean, they seriously hurt. I've seen a person that was working with us up on the tablelands walk into one of these without his shirt on. The thing I remember most is a medevac chopper landing to fly him out, and he was in a world of hurt. So, you know, not only venomous animals, we have venomous trees. Not poisonous, but venomous trees. Okay, but having said all that, is it really all doom and gloom? Yes, the overseas people think that. That's good. I'll keep them over there. Gives us more of Australia to ourselves. But let's try and change that attitude a little bit. So let's start somewhere. The world's most venomous fish. Okay, so this is a stonefish. And I get to walk now just to upset the person on the cameraman. Okay, so eyeballs up here. This is a fish out of water. This is a live fish. Okay, they live quite happily out of the water for sort of about an hour or two. They'll hold water in their gills. Okay, they're an intertidal animal. They're quite common from around about Brisbane, north, right around the coast of Australia. What I want to do is if we click on the little video there, just to stress the video man out. Okay, so just to give you some idea of what the hell's going on. So I'll give you some geographic lessons here. So there's the mouth of the animal there. His eyeballs are up in here, okay, and that animal's about that big. Okay, by and large they look pretty grumpy. They've got an upturned mouth, but they're pretty placid. If you know what you're doing and you handle them correctly, you don't get stung. Now they have a series of 13 spines. 13, remember that number? 13 on their back. Okay, each of those spines, it doesn't look like much, it just looks like a fish spine, but each of those spines has 2 venom sacs associated with it, and it'll make sense in a moment. If I take a pair of forceps and pull the skin down, you can then start to see that spine. And you can then see the venom sacs. So now you just imagine you stand on that, it goes through your foot, into your foot. Now what happens is you compress those venom sacs. There's a pair of grooves up the side of that spine, and the venom gets vaporised and comes out under huge force about 3 or 4 centimetres into the base of your foot. Okay? Sounds bad, looks worse when I show you in a moment. Okay? What's interesting though, from a stonefish perspective, it's one of the few animals in the world that uses its venom for one thing and one thing only, and that's defence. Most people fall into this trap of thinking venoms are used for defence. No, their primary reason is used for food acquisition. And usually, as a secondary derivative of that, it's also used as defence. Now, we know these guys use their venom for defence because we know how they feed, okay? So you can see here the stonefish, yes? Okay, where's the stonefish? This thing here? Incorrect. You are the world's worst, you are the weakest link. Get rid of. Over here? No. The eyeballs are there and there. Okay, so let's run that video. Now this is all done in slow motion. This is all stuff we shoot in our lab. So we'll hit the video and you can see that fish swimming in slow motion. And gone. Now that's shot at 1500 frames a second. So your camera works at 25 frames a second. Okay, so this is then played back slowly. So you can see all over for said little fish. Now there was no use of the spines in that. Okay, and I hear you all go, oh no, it's a one-off. I don't believe that. Well, let's have a look at it again. This time we'll do it in full speed. So what you have here is there's our happy little squid, and there up the back there is what we refer to as our stick of death, which you use for manoeuvring the animal into the right spot. Yeah, you got it. Yes, and we have ethics, it's all good. There's his eyeball, there's the mouth. Okay, so we'll run this, and this is normal speed. All over, done, finished. Particularly like this because the squid's still alive, going, oh, let me out. And you can see its tentacles, I'm out of here. The stonefish is going, yeah, and it's just hanging on for grim life. So how do you get it down there? Well, you cough, you hick, and let go, God damn you, and down you've gone. Lovely, okay? Now that all happens so quickly, we should see it in slow motion. So we'll now film it at 1500 frames a second and we'll watch it in slow motion. So we hit the video again, you can see the fins on the squid quite happily moving. When it gets in exactly the right spot, and down it goes. It's just such a wonderful shot. And it's all over. Different squid, completely different squid. Okay, so these things will eat until their eyeballs pop out. Okay, so you set them up in the lab, you can do this quite nicely. Okay, so there's no use of those spines for food acquisition. Okay, so the question you then ask yourself as a biologist is why the hell do they have them? Okay, and I refuse point blank to believe that in the last 200 years since Australians have been wandering around here on the reef that these things evolved these spines so that you wouldn't stand on them. There's got to be some other reason. Well, let's have a look and see what goes on to start with. So what we have here is my thumb there, my other thumb there. Here's the spine. This is a piece of a rubber thong. What we're going to do is we're going to push that rubber thong down over the spine, again, because we have access to it, and shot in 1500 frames a second. So if we hit the video again, just imagine you've now stood on this, it's gone up to the base of your foot. We now have venom coursing out of said spine. Yeah, trust me, it hurts. Okay, having been there, done that. My first indication of one of these things was jumping off the top of a boat from about 2 metres in the air. I had my then 18-month-old daughter in my arms, landed on one of these things, drove it up through the heel of my foot. And I remember two things. One was the excruciating pain, which was instantaneous. The second one was for my wife going, you drop my daughter and I'll kill you. Okay, I'm still alive, so I obviously didn't drop my daughter, but I don't know what was worse, okay? But horrific pain, there's no doubt about it. So what do they use these things for? Well, moray eels and sea snakes eat them, okay? And it's used to produce pain, to teach the animal not to eat you. So what happens is when you see these things get picked up, for example, by a moray eel, the fish tries to go around tail first. Because if it goes down tail first, the spines stand up, the moray eel gets a mouthful of spines and goes, that's bad. So what does the moray eel do? It tries to move it around to go down nose first. So there's this fight, which usually goes on to about 5 or 10 minutes. 9 times out of 10, the eel wins. Okay, but once it gets jabbed in the face, forget it. It's all over and it doesn't go near a stonefish again for like weeks and weeks and weeks. So it's used for defence. Righto. So what happens when somebody stands on this? Has everybody had tea? Some people are still eating. Yes, awesome. Yes. Okay, so I can talk about this. This is a mate of mine by the name of Jim Reeves, who's an emergency physician in Cairns. I've actually taught him toxinology and things of this nature. He was wandering around in Fiji, as you do, with his partner, and they went, we'll go for a dive. And in Fiji, they were walking out across the coral reef. Walks out, stands on said stonefish. So there's the holes in his foot where he stood on the stonefish. Jim then, so this is in Fiji, and he's then in the Fiji hospital where he was, which is this little tiny, it's half the size of this little room with a bed. That's it, okay? He then starts dosing himself with morphine, self-dosing, going, yeah, I can fix this. About a day and a half into that, rings me and goes, you know, we have an anti-venom for this, should I take it? He's still in pain. And I went, well, Jim, you know better than I, you're an emergency physician. Yeah, but I went, you idiot, take the anti-venom. We don't have any here and I've got a week worth of holiday left. Come home, Jim. No, it'll be fine. 6 weeks later, that's the base of his foot. Okay, so it's dropped right out. Have your chips come up yet? So there's a hole there, and one there. Okay, he damn near lost. I'll click back so you take that off the screen. He damn near lost his foot. Okay, all from the sake of not having anti-venom. Okay, predominantly because he got a secondary infection in it, but okay, we've got enough data now to suggest that when this goes wrong, it's for people that don't have anti-venom. Usually it's just a truckload of pain for about 24 hours, put your foot in hot water, treat it with a lot of heat and it'll get better, but occasionally it does go wrong and that's what happens. So let's have a look at it on a finer scale. So we have this ability to be able to grow cells in the lab, in a petri dish. So these are skeletal cells. So we take some cells from people, we grow them in a petri dish. They're nice, long, elongated cells, look really happy and healthy. What we've done is we've dropped some stonefish venom on this. This is a picture down the microscope. I have not moved the microscope or the slide. All I did, and these are attached to the slide so they can't move, all I've done is drop venom on it. 10 minutes later, I took a picture. That's what's happening. It's pretty impressive, okay, in 10 minutes. So it's gone from that where we've got nice long cells to something that just looks like scrambled eggs in the morning. So we went from there, and with some help from the guys in Melbourne Uni, we did some really cool work, okay? Now this is going to mean absolutely zip to zip everybody in the room. Don't panic, okay? This is the structure of a part of that venom. And I put it up for two reasons. One, I want to convince you, I want to remind you, I guess, that venoms are not just one component. Venoms in venomous animals, think of them as a vegetable stew. There are carrots and beans and corn and whatever else. And they all do different things and they interact, okay? This is one component of that. Now it's really cool because it's like a Lego block. If we take this one type of component that's in there and we put them all together, they all link up to form this donut, okay? So think of this as a Lego block. It slots in, another one slots in, and it then goes around and forms this donut. This donut then goes to your cell membrane and eases itself into it. So what I now have is a hole through your cell membrane. So this component makes the hole in your cell membrane, then all the other components in the venom go streaming inside that and just destroy the internals of that cell. Okay? So it's a really cool example, apart from the fact that we did it, but it's a really cool example that venoms are this mixture of things and different parts of it do different things. This component by itself is non-toxic. All it does is put holes in your cells. Why is that important from a science point of view? Well, if I wanted to deliver a particular drug to a particular cell and I can attach it to this, I can now deliver it directly inside your cell. That's non-toxic. So I can add a drug to it and away you go, which is one of the things we're now looking at. This may be the next way that we can actually deliver drugs to specific things. Okay, let's just change tack really quickly because I want to spend just a little bit of time on this. The world's most venomous snake, inland taipan. The world's most venomous snake. It's never killed anybody, but it's the world's most venomous snake. Okay, I think I always get the numbers wrong here, but something like the amount of venom that you extract from one of these things in one bite kills like 20,000 mice. Okay, how you relate that back to a human, I don't know, but it kills more mice per unit of venom than any other snake on the planet. But it's never killed anybody. Why has it not killed anybody? Because only 2 or 3 people have been bitten, and the people that have been bitten, we've got an anti-venom for it. Australia makes the best anti-venoms in the world, and we've managed to keep those people alive. Okay. Interestingly enough, the 3 or 4 people that have been bitten have all been amateur herpetologists. Read between the lines here. Okay. What I want to do, and this might be a little bit hard to show though, is, as I said at the start, 12 out of the top 13 snakes in the world, in Australia, okay, are the most venomous. Why is that? Okay, so I'm going to use the rattlesnake as an example. So it's a little hard to see this, it'll be right once the thing runs, but there's a little, or not a little, it's a rat here. And this is an experiment we did in the US many, many years ago. So if we hit that and run that, so there's a little rat running around doing its thing, and here's our rattlesnake. Okay, it's a diamondback. The rat's running around, This is just a little. They got heat pits in the front end, so it can tell where the animal is. So it picks up this heat from infrared radiation. Okay, hot little mouse, as all little mice are. The little mouse runs past, doing its thing. Oh, bite and let's go. That's typical of just about all snakes in the world, apart from the elapids and the ones in Australia. Let's go back, run it in reverse, and run it in slow motion. Comes back, bite, and see the rat try to take his head off, let it go, and then doesn't worry about it. Bite again, yeah, tries to kill it, let it go, and away you go. Now that rat, having been injected with venom, then wanders off, produces this smell because it's now stressed to the eyeballs. The rattlesnake goes, oh, I've got plenty of time, don't have to panic, and then follows this smell. Okay, the moon will come over in a moment, I think. I know, here's that rat not doing very well, twitch, and dying. Okay, this was not set up, this was all done for real, that's time passing, okay. Bear with me here. The rattlesnake then wanders off, finds said dead rat. It's still warm, and goes, whoa, that's great, and swallows it whole. And down it goes. Now that's what most people think snakes do, which they do, there's no doubt about that. Okay. All right, so that's our happy rattlesnake. Okay, let's move out of that. Now let's just look at what happens with Australian snakes. Now, like just about everything else in Australia, it goes into overkill. So usually what happens if you're a venomous snake, you either produce a very, very toxic venom and a little bit of it, or you produce a very weak venom and a truckload of it. Okay? This is an eastern brown, like typical Australian snakes. So what I want you to watch here is there's going to be a hand come in here. The snake's going to go up here. It's going to bite said hand, and then it's going to let it go. What I want you to do is look at the place when the snake bites the hand. Okay? So roll the video. So there's the hand, and what I want you to do is look in here as the snake lets go. Now that's venom. Okay? Eastern browns are renowned for it. Let's produce an incredibly toxic venom and truckloads of it. Okay, hang on, we're supposed to just do one or the other, not Australian snakes. Okay, they just overkill to the max. Okay, why do you want to do that? Okay, very good reason. All right, now, again, this is the same scenario that you saw for the rattlesnake. Again, eastern brown, this time a little mouse. So we'll roll the film again. I hope, yeah, here we go. Happy little mouse. Ooh, there's food, grabbed him, hasn't let him go. He's now rolled up, got hold of the animal, and just hanging on to it. Now, if anybody's done any work with little mice in the lab, okay, they bite, they scratch, they do everything they possibly can. If you're going to hang on to this thing, you've got your eyeballs right close to his nasty, vicious teeth and his little claws. You don't want to be hanging on to that for the next 10 or 15 minutes while it slowly dies, because you're going to get your eyeballs ripped out. Not good. So you want to make sure it dies and dies really quickly. Why not do what the rattlesnake does? Good question. Before mice got into Australia and where things like the taipans live, the prey density is very, very low. You may only come across a prey item once every 6, 8, 12 weeks, maybe every 3 or 4 months. You cannot afford, when it comes past, to go, bite, yeah, when it dies, I'll go find it, because you may not. If you're a rattlesnake, you're feeding on gophers and everything else, there's millions of them there. Okay? In Australia, there's not. And that's one of the reasons that we put forward for this, why Australian snakes have this incredibly potent venom and lots of it. Prey densities, historically, were very low, and you couldn't afford to miss that. So, let's change tack once more. So we're bouncing all over the place. Cone snails. Okay, marine snails, so from there to there, a big cone snail's about this big. Up north, we have a saying, if it's a cone, leave it alone. No, not that sort of cone, Carl, I know. Okay, a cone snail, all right? They're marine snails, they're slow, normally or move at the pace of a normal garden snail. They are the most venomous mollusk on the planet, okay? What I'm going to do here is run a film or a clip that is real time. It has not been sped up, okay? So to give you a little bit of geographic orientation, here's our fish, our happy little fish hiding there. There's the nose of the cone snail. Eyeball there, and its mouth is underneath. And out of its mouth is going to come a tongue, okay? And there's the shell. So if we run this in real time, it gets better. And down you go. Yes. So cool. Okay. So what that thing does is it's got a tongue with a hypodermic needle on the bottom. So it jabs it into the fish, injects venom, And then what happens is there's a two-phase to it. First off, you get this tetanic paralysis. So in other words, the fish goes and then can't do anything. But if you've got something that's like that, you can't get it down your mouth. So there's another punch to that venom that then gives you a flaccid paralysis. And you go all flaccid. The first one, the tetanic paralysis, really quick acting, happens really quickly but wears off really fast. The second one takes a little longer but lasts forever. So there's this two-pack punch to this whole thing. If we look at it in slow motion, because we just have access to all these cameras, nose, mouth, or mouth through here, eyeball there, the tongue with a hypodermic needle here and their fish, and we'll play this, which is now 1500 frames a second. So you can see the radula, or the tooth's going to come out of here, jab into the fish kicking and screaming. We won't run that for too long because it's slow motion and he kicks and screams for what seems like hours, but it's only a couple of seconds. Okay, so basically the cone snail has picked the front end of the animal, bang, injected it, and away you go. Let's have a look at that in a little bit more detail to give you some idea of just how spectacular this is. So here's our fish secured in the aquarium. There's the tongue of the cone snail, and out of here is going to come that hypodermic needle. Now what I want you to do is, I don't care about watching here, I want you to watch what happens on the other side. Okay, so if we push that button again, so you can see the fins of the fish moving, and bang, he's injected it, but there's venom coming out the other side. So this has gone clean through the brain case from one side out the other side, and it's injecting venom, and there's venom molecules up there. So it comes out with a little bit of force. Okay, you have to. You've got to go through like scales and things of that nature. So it's pretty impressive from that point of view. Let's have a look then. You can actually see his eyeballs swelling that size. So there's obviously a fair amount of venom that's been injected to that. Now, cone snails are incredibly venomous, but they're not real smart. Okay, and if you actually want to collect the venom from these guys, you've got to milk them. Okay, so what you do is, here's our nose from our cone snail again. Here's his tongue, and this is a little test tube with a little bit of cling wrap on the end, and a little bit of fish. And you hold that in front of him, and he goes, "Oh, it's a fish! I'll sting that." So what I want you to do is watch in here. So hit the video again. So he's smelling it to work out what's going on, injects the hypodermic needle, and there goes the venom coursing into the little test tube. So just imagine that, sort of, as I said, into the side of your head if you're a fish. Not real good. So he's still coursing venom out of here. Okay? As I said, not real smart, so you can milk them, but that hypodermic needle, or that tooth that you can see there, only gets used once. Then it's lost and it has to reload it. And it takes it about 5 to 10 minutes to reload another tooth, and away you go. Still coursing venom out the other end. So, really spectacular animals. And when you look at the venom from these guys, some of the work that's been done suggests that certainly some of these species have 500 different components in the venom of one cone snail. 500 different components, okay? When you look at it, that's the world's worst slide, okay? Cool, it's supposed to say ziconotide. You need to remember that word when the trivia questions come later on, okay? It's a drug that's been produced from the venom in these guys. It's a painkiller. It's 100 times more potent than morphine, and it's non-addictive. Okay, and it's come into clinical trials, I think about 3 or 4 years ago. That's just one component from one species of cone snail that has 500 different components in it. Okay, there's, I think, 500 different species of cone snails. They all seem to have different components. Do some sums. There's 250,000 different components you could possibly get from cone snails. And this is just one. Yeah? It's a whole heap of other things we can do out of there. All right, let's change tack. Only because I just have this such a cool idea as to why platypus are venomous, and I'm sure there's going to be some people in the room that are going to go, "Yeah, Seymour, you're an idiot," but that's fine. When you have some data and you can prove me otherwise, that'll be good, but let's run with it. Okay, so platypus, world's most venomous mammal. Yeah, I know they're a monotreme, but they sort of fit in that group. Okay, so platypus, it's only the males that are venomous. Okay, so if you have a look, I know this looks a little bit like a roadkill, but it is actually a live animal. So the little rubbery nose at the front. Down on these back legs in the males, they have these enormous keratin spines. Okay, what's interesting is both the males and the females have them when they're born. The females and the males also have what's referred to as these crural glands, which are big glands at the base of their legs. But as the females grow and become sexually mature, they lose the spine, and they're no longer able to produce or have an output for the toxins from the crural glands. And it's only the males that have it. Okay? when you look at it, if you pick up one of these and you don't know it, we'll talk about that to start with. If you pick one up and you don't know what's going on and the male injects the venom into you, so what usually happens is it's usually a trout fisherman or some idiot goes, oh, there's a platypus, and picks it up. What happens is you pick it up and the animal takes its back legs and goes and just jabs these big spines into you. There's a picture of a bloke by the name of Keith Payne. Now, if you know anything about the army, Keith got a Victorian Cross and was one of the I think 3 people in the world or in Australia that's still alive. He's just like Forrest Gump. When he was in Nam, his platoon or whatever got bombed. He ran in and grabbed them all and brought them all back out. Okay, until about the second last one, and he ended up with a big piece of shrapnel in his bum. Okay, he picked up one of these things and it stabbed him in the finger. And this is a picture, I think, like 2 or 3 weeks later. We interviewed him and talked to him about it, and his conclusion was the shrapnel in my butt and arm was nothing compared to the pain from this animal. Okay, so obviously it's producing pain. It does a couple other things as well, but it produces pain, makes you feel pretty bad. So the question you ask as a biologist then is why? Why do the males have venom? Okay, and the standard reply from everybody is, well, the males have it obviously because if they're the only ones that got it, they're defending their territory to keep everything out. Okay, I can understand that, except the females get envenomed as well. So not only do things that try and come and eat them, do they envenom them, they envenom the females and make the females sick and horrible. Okay, so I thought about this for a long time and it just didn't make sense to me if the males had this and the females had it as well to start with and then they lose it, why you would want that. Okay, and I've come up with this cool theory. Okay, when you have 2 platypus and a male and a female together and they like one another, they swim around in a little pond for a while. Okay, the female comes into where the male is. The males have territories. They rub rubbery noses together and the music goes in the background and all things happen. They mate. What then happens is it appears that the male then envenoms the female. Why do you want to do that? Well, it appears, certainly from the limited amount of information I can get, is the time in which a female is receptive to being bred in the year is very small, like a week to 10 days. So if I want to ensure my parentage, the female comes in, I rub noses with her, I mate with her, I then inject venom into her, she gets pissed with the world, doesn't feel good, goes back to her burrow for the next 10 days and doesn't come out. I've just ensured I'm the dad. I'm going to throw it out there now and you guys can think about that and come up with a better idea. Now, I've came up with this about 10 or 12 years ago and I've given it at many seminars and you usually come up with, I don't like the idea, but I can't tell you why it wouldn't work. Why they originally had them, and the females have lost it, I think it's probably an evolutionary trait that if you go well back, there are lots of things that ate these things. Okay, if you look at the evolutionary history and the fossil history, there were big snakes and stuff like that. That's disappeared. We hunted all the big things to extinction, so it's no longer an advantage for the females to hang on to it. But anyway, let's leave it there. Okay, let's move on because I'm running out of time. I want to finish with the world's most venomous animal, box jellyfish. Thing called Chironix fleckeri. That's a very young me in the background. This is a reasonable sized animal. So they're about the size of a basketball. That's a clip. Can we just, it's a woeful clip, but it'll give you some idea. Here's an animal swimming through the water. That's a fish in the middle of it. Okay, and you'll see its tentacles come across. This one's just in slow motion. It's just cruising, not doing anything, having a great time. And there's the tentacles through the back end there. I'm going to go backwards because now having seen that, I want to put some really cool facts to this animal. Okay, so a big one's about the size of a basketball and it's square in shape. Off each corner on a big animal, there'll be 15 to 17 tentacles. Let's keep it simple, 15. So there's a total, 15 on each corner, there's 4 corners, 60 tentacles. Each tentacle, when this animal is swimming, will be somewhere between 2 to 2.5 metres in length. So from like here to the wall in length. Okay? Now, add into that, okay, which is pretty cool to start with, okay, the animal is 96% water. Okay, we're about 74, 76%. It's 96% water, okay? It has 24 eyes, okay? It has a set of 6 eyes here, 6 there, 6 there, and 6 there in clusters. They all look inwards, so the animal has 360-degree vision looking through itself. There's a really good reason for that, which we don't have time. It may be in the question, we'll come back to that. So 24 eyes. These are not just light, dark, receptive eyes. These are eyes with lenses, pupils, retinas, and they focus. Okay? This is not an animal that's just swimming around there blindly doing whatever. Okay, let's add a few more things to it. They sleep at night. So when the lights go out, they drop out of the water, go to the bottom and go completely catatonic. Okay? Add to that, when they're in a hurry, they swim around somewhere between 4 to 6 knots. For the nautically challenged in the room, that's about that speed. If you put it into some sort of context, if I could get this thing into a 50-metre swimming pool and convince it to swim, tumble, turn, and do 1,500 metres, okay? Thorpe or Hackett in a 1,500-metre race would do it just over 15 minutes. This thing will get out about 20 or 30 seconds later. That's impressive, okay? The one thing, there's a variety of other things that are really cool with it. Most jellyfish have a mouth of which they take food into, pre-digest it in their head, and spit it back out through the mouth. Okay? Nah, not this guy. Okay? It has a mouth, food comes in, the stomach's up here, it pre-digests it there, it then comes down, those tentacles are hollow, it absorbs all the food through the tentacles and poos out the back end. So, jellyfish, one mouth, food come in and out. Box jellyfish, these guys have got 60 tentacles, one mouth, one stomach, and 60 bums. There's a really good reason for that, which we'll come back later on. But the other thing that you need to add on top of that is it has a metabolic rate that is an order of magnitude higher than any other jellyfish we know of. So what does that mean? If your heart rate, they don't have hearts, but if your heart rate's 60 and you're a normal jellyfish, a box jellyfish has a heart rate of 600. So it's got a V8 power plant, okay? The final thing from that is this is the world's most venomous animal. A big sting from this, which is 2 metres worth of tentacle on your body, and you have somewhere in the vicinity of 120 to 160 seconds, and I'm taking you home in a body bag. 2 to 3 minutes, you're dead. End of story. Okay? Let's have a look at that. Okay? Here is a particular graphic image. This is of a small child. You can see the sting marks down along the legs. There was around about 2.4 metres of tentacle contact on that child. Child was about 30 odd kilos in weight. And the scene went something like this. So about where that wall is about how far from shore they were. So the child was in the water, waist deep. There was an adult next to them. The child has bumped into the jellyfish. And when you get stung by one of these, it hurts. Okay, immediate tears to your eyes, severe pain. And this is the way it went. Kid bumped into it, screams. Scream, scream, scream. The adults picked them up, scream, 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 and got them to shore in that time frame. The child did not stop screaming because the pain went away. The child stopped screaming because he was dead. In under 10 seconds. There is no other venomous animal on the planet that kills people as quickly as this thing. Okay? It is impressive from that point of view. So add all that together, and what I want to do is I've still got a couple of minutes, which is good. Yeah, cool. Nobody's fallen asleep, which is great. I want to have a look at how the venom gets into these things, okay? This is the tentacle of a jellyfish running across the screen under a microscope. And there's these layers that are coming across here. All those little layers are all the venom apparatus that's in there. So if I look at that and look at it, and now I've turned the tentacle so it goes up the screen and flied in, what I want you to look at is these things here, okay? And they're called nematocysts, or if you want, stinging organelles. Think of them as balloons with a wound up hypodermic needle inside it with a little trigger on the outside. Now they're not cells, they're cell organelles. So they're a component of a cell, right? So we're getting really complicated here. But if I then extract them, so pull out everything else and just have these stinging organelles. So I said, think of them as a balloon with a wound up hypodermic needle inside it. So that's an undischarged one, that's a discharged one. Now the interesting thing is they're different shapes because there are different types, which we'll come back to in a moment. But to go from there to there is the fastest biological mechanism we know of. For a cell organelle, and it's the fastest biological mechanism we know of. Okay? We did some high-speed cinematography on this. We were looking at around about 25,000 frames a second. We got that in one frame and that in the next. Yeah. So, yeah, and it happens quicker than that, but that's all we could get. Okay, our camera unfortunately didn't go any higher than that. The guys at NASA did some work on this, which I think, I so want to go and work at NASA because they obviously have lots of time on their hands, and tried to work out the pressures and the G-force involved. Okay, the G-forces are the amount of gravity. So if you look at something like Top Gun with Tom Cruise in the plane, he pulls about 14 or 15 Gs and passes out. So 14 and 15 times the force of gravity, Tom Cruise is gone. Okay, there's talk that the guys from NASA reckon this is probably 25, 30,000 G-force. Okay, now, and when people say that, it's sort of, to me, it just goes, doesn't register with me. So they went a little further and went, well, let's look at it from a pressure point of view. And my apologies, I've never converted this over to metric, but from an imperial point of view, if you look at the pressure in your car tyres, it's around about 30 to 40 psi, or pounds per square inch. Okay, they reckon that the pressures involved in this are like 100 to 200,000 higher than the pressure in your car tyre. That then starts to give you some idea of what's going on the back end of this. Okay, question you ask as a biologist is, how the hell did they do it? And the answer is, we got no idea, absolutely none. Okay, so because it all happens so quickly, it's really hard to film. So we can do it in an animation for you. So this is one of these nematocysts or cell organelles, and it's going to punch through a piece of skin at the top. So if we roll that video clip, so it unfolds, there's some wicked little spines, it punches through, and you then have this hypodermic needle of which the venom then leaks out of. Well, it doesn't leak, it comes out under pressure. Okay. Now these things are small, 800,000 per square centimetre. They're really, really small. Okay. So if we just roll that again, this is looking from inside the skin, so you're inside the body. So if we hit that video again, yep. So this thing's punched through, goes through veins and arteries, or capillaries and things. Venom leaks out the side, gets into your circulatory system, goes straight to your heart. You know, a minute later, you're all dead. End of story. Okay? So really impressive from that point of view. Having said that, we have been able to get some footage of it. Okay? Now I want to show you two pieces of footage. This is of a different species of jellyfish, doesn't matter. It's out of a thing called an irukandji, but they have these stinging organelles concentrated. And what I want you to do here is we've basically affected the animal with some drugs, so slowed it down. Then we've filmed it at 5,000 frames a second, and then we've slowed that down. So this will give you some idea what's happening. So if we hit the little button there, and nothing happened. Oh, there we go. So we've slowed that down like hundreds of thousands of times. Okay, and you can see these things coursing out here, and venom. You can see these venom droplets here coursing all over the place. That's really cool footage. Really cool footage. Okay, so that's all going on. So just imagine if these some things come in contact with your hand, it's now forced out, and these things can be upwards of 0.5 millimetre in length. Okay, that's cool. What's even cooler is when you look at it from a big box jellyfish point of view. And this is really cool. I'm probably not going to come across just how stoked I am with this piece of footage, but it was years in the making. Remember I told you at the start there were these different types of these stinging organelles? They have different components in them, okay? Big box jellyfish have 3 different types. They have a big long cigar-shaped one, which punches holes into things and delivers the venom, okay? But it's coming out under force, huge force, which we talked about. They have these other 2 little ones, which fire off and glue the tentacle to whatever they're hitting. Or we thought. No one had seen it. What we're going to do here is we managed to get all this on high-speed footage, and I want you to have a look up here. We're going to play this video about 2 or 3 times, but I want you to look in that top corner to start with. So we hit the video. Fire 1, 2. Did you see that? No. So we run it again. The video man's going to hate me. And nothing. I don't stop it and just hit it again. Yep. Okay, so we run it again. 1, 2. You see the 2 different? That first wave you see is these different nematocysts coming out, gluing the tentacle to the prey. It's got glue in it, so that when these big high force ones come through, it doesn't blow the tentacle away. Okay? Now, I've just shown you a clip that's like 2 or 3 inches or 2 or 3 seconds in length, and you go, yeah, that's cool. You have no idea how many years went behind the back end to actually get that. Okay? So it's pretty cool. So we'll run it one more time. I've got to get my mileage out of it. There. Okay? Really quite spectacular. So again, the difference with big box jellyfish is, I said, these things are 800,000 per square centimetre. When they fire off, boy, do they fire off. So you get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these things delivering venom. Okay, to quickly finish up, I've got to have some science in here somewhere. It can't just be pretty pictures. But this is what happens to what's referred to as your mean arterial pressure when you get stung. What's mean arterial pressure? Okay, standard people have blood pressure 120 over 80. If I add those two together, 120 plus 80 is 200, and I divide it by 2, gives you a value of 100. That's your mean arterial pressure. Okay, it's just a measure of your blood pressure. This is the mean arterial pressure for rats, because you can't sort of run venom on second year medical students. Ethics just don't let you do it, okay? So this is an anaesthetised rat. We've cracked his chest, put him on the table, measured his mean arterial pressure, and he's quite stable. At this point here, we inject him with a tiny little bit of venom. And that's what happens to his mean arterial pressure. Look at the time frame, bang, poof, gone, okay? So what actually happens there is his heart actually contracts and doesn't release. Hence why you get an enormous increase in your blood pressure to start with, so your heart goes bang, then it doesn't release, so there's no more pumping of the blood, and you fall over. Okay, very impressive venom. What becomes more impressive about it is it's very, 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 very specific. Okay, so if we look at cell survival here, and I have two sorts of cells. I have cardiac cells, which are heart cells, and skeletal muscle cells. These are for humans. We can grow them in the lab. My control, okay, nothing happens, everything survives. If I then put in a small amount of venom into either my skeletal cells or my cardiac cells, my skeletal cells, by and large, don't die. My cardiac cells fall over. If I increase that just a little bit more, you find that, and this is literally within minutes, so we're looking at about a 10% survival rate versus about an 80% survival rate. So this is not just randomly attacking cells, it's attacking specific sites on specific cells. Okay? It's a very, very complex venom, but the bits that are doing the damage actually attack your heart. Okay, why is that important? Well, this is a pretty gross picture, but it's somebody having a heart transplant. Okay? One of the things that we noticed, we did a lot of work on cane toads, okay? Because we just have lots of them up there, and they're bulletproof, okay? Cane toads, you can knock them on the head, scramble their brain, so they're never going to come back to life again, crack their chest, and their heart keeps beating for like the next 3 or 4 hours. They're just brilliant lab animals, okay? So what we did is we were doing a whole heap of work trying to get an idea on what the venom was doing. Had our cane toad, whacked it with venom, caused cardiac standstill, beautiful, threw it in the wet waste bin, got the next one, and continued on. As you do for like half a dozen cane toads, went, yeah, it's lunchtime, let's go for lunch, wandered off, came back to have lunch. Oh yeah, wonder what's happened. Ooh, and all the hearts started rebeating. That's like, that is awesome. Okay, yeah, zombie, yeah, exactly. And I remember giving a talk where I was talking about how the heart operates and how the venom attacks the heart at a cardiologist conference, and talking about all this. And then somebody in the back just said, "Do you realise what you've just found?" And I went, "Venom that kills hearts." And he went, "Yeah, and you think that through a bit more." And I went, "What?" He said, "Think about heart transplants. So if I want to transplant a heart, so I have a donor, they've died, I've hacked their heart out, I've then got to stop that heart from beating, which they usually do by loading it up with things like sodium chloride, then sticking it on ice. Then you've got to get in a plane and fly it somewhere to whoever you're going to give it to. And you have a very short time window, 3 to 5 hours maybe. You're stressing the heart out, there are all sorts of problems with it. We now have a compound that we can cause cardiac standstill, the heart stops, and in cane toads at least, 5 to 6 hours later, they spontaneously start rebeating. And all of a sudden, all the lights went on in my head and went, yeah, I can become rich and famous if I can make sure the heart comes back to life again. So we're working on that little bit. The other interesting thing, we did a series of work in arthritic mice. So you can take mice and you can actually induce arthritis in them. Don't ask me how, ethically it's a bit dodgy, but you can do it. Okay, so a severity score here, 0 being the mouse don't have any pain. 1 is, like me, I'm getting old and the knees don't really work. 2 is I'm sort of almost, this is really hurting. 3 and 4, well, by and large, 3 you're pretty much on a Zimmer frame, and 4 you're not walking. Really bad, okay? Our control mouse here, so at day 0, we then induce arthritis in them. Okay, and it takes about 3 weeks for that arthritis to come on board. What we then did is we took the venom and we pulled out the toxic component that attacks your heart. Remember I said it's like a vegetable soup? We pulled that bit out, and then we loaded our mice up with venom versus no venom. You can forget all this, just come to day 38. We have our control mice at around about 2.5 to 3 for a pain score, which is a very unhappy mouse. It's got pain, joints everywhere. Versus our mice that we've given venom, just over 1, which is sort of me at the moment going, my knees hurt. That's huge. That is huge, okay, from an arthritic point of view. So we're playing around with that as well. Finally, just to finish this up, okay, again, cell survival, 100% versus different concentrations for 2 different types of cells. Heart cells, which are the little triangles. So as it comes along, as I get to a higher and higher concentration, eventually I get to a stage where I start killing the cells. And remember I said this venom is very, very specific to cardiac cells. Apart from when I give cancer to cells. Then it becomes more specific and more toxic to cancer cells. Let's have a look at that. I only have to come along here to 1 microgram per mil. I still get 100% survival of my heart cells, which is a good thing, but I'm now getting around about 25% death of my cancer cells. So the take-home message from all of this is, 1, given I've been stung hundreds and hundreds of times of these things, I should have a good heart for transplant, I'm never getting arthritis, and I shouldn't get cancer. So watch this space. If this all goes wrong in the next week, you'll know it doesn't work. All right, just to finish this all up then and put this back into context, this slide's here for 2 reasons. 1, it's to convince you that I'm not a complete idiot. Okay, this is my colleague Richard Fitzpatrick. We do work on tiger sharks. This is a 4.7 metre tiger shark. We catch them and we put tags, sat tags and things on them. Richard doing what Richard does. That's me. Okay, last time I played with one of these things, it bit me in the leg. So there are some things I won't play with anymore. So I tend to keep way up the end there, but it's also a good background to venomous animals. Okay, snakes. In Australia, we kill about 1 to 2 people a year. In a bad year, it's about 5. Okay, but 1 to 2 people a year. Jellyfish, on average, we kill 1 person a year in Australia. Spiders, we've had 13 known deaths, all from Sydney funnel webs. Okay, 13 known. Octopus, 2 known in Australia. Okay, 2 deaths from those. Cone snails, 1 in Australia that we know of. Stonefish, nobody has definitively died from a stonefish envenoming in Australia. Okay, people will tell you they have. They're all divers at around about 5 to 10 metres of depth that have gone, I'll just sit on the reef, bang, have sat on the stonefish, gone, spat their reg out, sucked in water, died, and the papers go, diver dies due to stonefish. No, diver drowned. Okay, but platypus, nobody's died from them. Lots of people in pain. Ants and bees kill 2 to 4 people a year in Australia. Yes. Now, we've got to get ants in there somewhere, so I'll put it in direct. Okay, so let's have a look at the average deaths in Australia from venomous animals. 7. 7. It's pretty cool. Average deaths per year in Australia from murder, cars, drugs, alcohol, 3,000. Over 3,000 versus 7. Don't tell the overseas people. Okay? So if you are going to die, it's not liable to be from a venomous animal. It's almost probably going to be something like alcohol, given we're in a pub. Okay? So venomous animals, from that point of view, we don't need to worry about. But I think it's something we should be really proud of. Why? 1, because we're not killing people. We make the best antivenoms in the world. But just from the stuff that I've shown you, and I'm not the only person in Australia working on novel compounds from these venoms. Drugs, antifoulants, which I didn't talk to you about, heart drugs, arthritic drugs, all these sorts of things are there just from the animals that I'm playing with. And just in a little bit of our work we've looked at. Who knows what else is sitting out there? All you've got to do is go and look. And you'd be surprised at what you'd find. Having said that, I will stop talking. And we'll go from there. So thank you very much, guys.
So we can kind of easily dismiss the nutcase thing, I think. Obviously, when you're doing this stuff, you have shed loads of safety precautions and things. What's the first aid kit in the Venom research lab look like?
Yeah, okay, the trick is not to get stung. Look, by and large, I mean, I've talked it up that it's, you know, that lots of things go wrong and things of that nature. We haven't had, no, we've had 2, yes, both me. I was going to say, we haven't had a major envenoming at all in the labs, predominantly because, you know, there are lots of things involved. I've been bitten by a sea snake once, which was this time last year. Again, it was an accident from me. And a series of stings from irukandji, which have put me in hospital 11 times, but we learnt after that. But basically, the first aid for us is just a standard run-of-the-mill first aid kit. You can't administer antivenom. Okay, if I give you antivenom, there's a chance you'll go into an anaphylactic shock and you'll die from that. That's bad. Okay, it's only a small chance, but they will not administer antivenom unless you're in a tertiary hospital. So carrying antivenom is not an issue. You shouldn't be using it anyway. So you have a snake bite kit. So we have compression bandages. Other than that, it's just a standard run-of-the-mill first aid kit sitting on about 4.5 inches of paperwork. Trust me, to get in the field is a nightmare.
Actually, I was going to ask about your friend that didn't take the stonefish anti-venom. Is that why? Was he worried about having a heart attack? Why wouldn't you take anti-venom?
Because it wasn't in Fiji and he was going to have to come home early from his holiday. Jim is an emergency physician. He's a very, very good emergency physician, but he's a moron. It's like, what? You just shouldn't be doing that.
And so I have to ask, whenever you're banking your career on rearing and handling and milking these incredibly toxic things, is it run-of-the-mill now? As you're handling these things, are you nervous? Is it,
The day you're not nervous is the day you get stung. Yeah. The day you forget about it and go, oh, this is easy and wandering is the day you get nailed. So look, we have, not weekly, but certainly every month or two we go through a complete, in the aquarium. I've got a big aquarium system in Cairns which has got, we presently have 140 odd stonefish in it, for example, and we're milking those every 4 to 6 weeks. But we're running through, this is what these are the procedures, this is what happens if something goes wrong, this is what you do. And for us, I'd say now for us it's a run-of-the-mill type thing, but it's only because we've been doing it for so long. But we have a series of precautions in place so that nothing actually can go wrong. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have experience with it, but I do have experience tipping over vending machines. I imagine it's a lot like that. You've got to do it with confidence, but at a measurable level of caution, because things can go wrong really quickly.
See, I wouldn't have said vending machines. I'd have said cows. If you're going to tip cows, you've got to do that carefully as well. Yes. But yeah, look, it really is a matter of if you're cautious and you know what you're doing, it's not an issue. Yeah. It's when you forget about it or you take shortcuts that something goes wrong. And you learn very quickly not to take the shortcuts.
All right, I'm sure when we do questions later on, it will be constantly what have you and haven't you been stung by? And I have tons of other questions, but before we do that, we should probably take a quick break and we'll do some trivia. So write down all your questions now and hang on to them later on. We'll take a little quick 10-minute break. We'll start trivia. And for now, let's give another round of applause for Jamie Seymour.
Africa, I remember, and he was in a coma for days. But so that's not one of the top poisonous snakes?
No.
Or one of the mambas from Africa?
I would struggle to find a poisonous snake anywhere in the world.
I
mean, a venomous snake.
You're going to be like that. You're going to be here all night.
The black mambas, I think, are the ones that maybe fall into the top 13. Yeah. Whether you look at what's the most venomous snake in the world becomes really, really tricky because basically they base it on how many mice die from whatever. What the hell happens when a particular... And my reason for saying that is when you look at a venomous animal and you look at how effective it is for that venom for the purpose that it's designed for, i.e. catching prey, it's across the board, everybody's very, very successful. When you start going, okay, well, this is the most venomous animal from a snake because it can kill 20,000 mice. If it can do that, and it's going to knock over so many people. I don't know. I got into an argument of this about 15 years ago and went, well, let's do it another way. Let's go and test it on humans, which obviously you can't. So we tested it on human heart cells and human skeletal muscle cells and came out with what was really interesting was box jellyfish were truckloads ahead of everything else on the planet. The next thing that came in after that were brown snakes, and they probably rank 3rd or 4th in Australia. Both of the taipan species, the 2 inline taipan species, were up there, but they certainly weren't in the top 10. So it's a really tough one to get a handle on.
Can I ask another quick question? You said that you've been stung by a box jellyfish, and you see people who do survive. So is it the amount of tentacle contact that you get depends on how you die?
Yeah, so big box jellies, to get you into any sort of life-threatening situation, you need somewhere between 2 to 3 metres worth of tentacle contact on a 70-kilo person. So I've been stung hundreds of times across the hands and across the feet. I've had 2 really severe stings from big box jellies. One, when we were working with a film crew one night, I'd grabbed the animal, and just as I'd grabbed the animal, the tentacles came across my body, but I had a stinger suit on, but it caught a fish in the back end of the tentacles, so it fired off and then fired off clean through the stinger suit and got me right across the chest. And the second one was across the back end. I was in an old stinger suit that had the back end worn out of it. And I was backing through the water, and it was thin, and it hammered me across the backs of the legs. So, yeah. But the big boxies aren't the ones you worry about, to be honest. I mean, to get 2 or 3 metres worth of tentacle contact, you need to be in a pair of boardies and get hit across the chest. Irukandji are the ones which we didn't talk about. They're the ones that have nailed me in hospital 11 times. So every time you come in contact with those guys, you're off to hospital. So thankfully it was 2006 since I was last stung by that. So it's been a while, which is good. About that big? Yeah. Horrible little animals. Horrible little animals.
Yeah, I got stung by a bee once. That was pretty bad.
Yeah.
I had to take like 3 Nurofen.
3? You're just tough. Most people go 5.
All right, the question. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, so how does the Irukandji rate to the box jellyfish in poison?
As in toxicity-wise?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had 2 deaths from Irukandji anywhere in the world. Both, one off Cairns, one off Hamilton Island. If I was to look at them from a toxicity point of view, if we take the venoms and look at the venoms on humans, big box jellies are orders of magnitude above it. Yeah. But if you look at them and they're prey items, they both feed on fish, they're about the same.
All right, in the middle.
If you get stung or bitten several times by the same animal, does your response become worse, or does your survival rate become better the more often you get hear stories about snake handlers who are practically immune to snake bites because they've been bitten so many times. So can you become immune to Irukandjis now you've been hospitalized 11 times?
Okay, theoretically, yes. Now let me put that into context. How do we produce an antivenom? So if you look at all the antivenoms that are produced in Australia, you take the venom from the animal, you inject a small quantity into a horse, the next day you inject a little bit more, the next day you inject a little bit more. It might be over a week, but you increase the venom load over time. So you give them a little bit to start with so it doesn't affect them too much, and you increase the load. What happens is the animal starts to produce antibodies, so that if they're bitten in future, they already have the antibodies in their body. So what an antivenom in Australia is let's say we're looking at a brown snake antivenom. So we take brown snake venom, we inject it into a horse, and they use Clydesdales. You inject a little bit over time. Then over a period of, I think it's about 3 to 4 months, they then bleed the animal, take about 1 litre or 2 of blood, spin that, get rid of the red blood cells, and you have the serum left over. They then do a couple of, IP-restricted things with it, but pull out all the antibodies, so that when you get an antivenom, you're actually getting the antibody. So if you can produce an antibody in a horse and the horse is immune, by rights you can do it in humans. You need to be bitten a lot of times, very frequently, for it to happen. Okay? Let me tell you, 11 times by Irukandji over a period of about 5 years is not enough times. Can it get worse? Yes, but it's usually due to an anaphylactic reaction. So things like people that get allergic or that have problems with bees and ants, it's not the venom itself that's causing the problem, it's the body's reaction through anaphylaxis that gives rise to those deaths. So if you look at the people that have died from bee stings and ant stings, it's not from the venom directly, it's from an anaphylactic reaction to that. And you can get, and that's why some people when they first get bitten by or stung by bees, it's not an issue, but 3 or 4 times later, they start to get this anaphylactic reaction. That's why they have EpiPens, which work really well. So a dose of adrenaline fixes the problem.
Well, it's just that picture of the eastern brown biting what looked like a finger.
Yep.
That's a real
Hand?
finger.
That was my hand.
Your hand.
But a silicon cast of my hand.
Okay, all right.
We can't give all our stories away.
Okay.
Look good,
I was
didn't
thinking
it?
that person might be hyperimmune. But okay,
No, definitely not.
That was his PhD student.
That's right, yeah.
So how do you define the metabolic rate? And you said that this box jellyfish has the highest rate. So how can you measure this?
Okay, so metabolic rate, normally for the easiest way to do that is look at oxygen consumption. So what we did is we took the animals, put them in a sealed container in water and measured the oxygen depletion in the water. It's a standard run-of-the-mill thing for aquatic animals. Because they don't have hearts, so basically everything's done by diffusion, but all you're doing is just looking at the oxygen depletion in the water, and they deplete the oxygen an order of magnitude faster than any other jellyfish. It's actually quite scary. It's interesting, I was talking to one of my PhD students while I was sitting in the plane station today in Sydney. We've just done some metabolic rate studies on, she's just pulled some metabolic studies out on stonefish, and they are lower than the box jellyfish.
But would it mean that they evolved in a high oxygen environment?
No, it just means they're more active. So they're basically box jellyfish. Think of them as having a V8 power plant. Everything they do at speed.
What's their lifespan?
So a big boxy will go from a juvenile, so buds off as a little polyp about 1 millimetre in size. A big animal would be 35 to 40 centimetres across the bell. They'll grow somewhere between 1 to 2 millimetres a day when they're in a hurry. So
How long do they live?
depending on how much food and what's going on, 3 to 4 months. If you slow them down, they'll go maybe 6 months. If you speed them up, they'll get to adult in about 3 or 4 months' time. They get to a certain stage, as a trigger, they spawn and they die. Yeah. So everything about them is fast.
Some up the front, I think.
Actually, while I've got the microphone,
Mum, give me the microphone. Come on, Mum. Come on, Mum.
Does that mean that every stinger season is new
Correct.
individuals?
Correct.
What's your favourite venomous animal?
Okay, what's my favourite venomous animal?
Gotta pick just one?
Yep. It's easy. It's really simple. Onychophorans. Or Peripatus. Often referred to as velvet worms. So they're supposedly the missing link between arthropods or insects and annelids or worms. So think of a little caterpillar. They're about this big. They've got lots of little legs on them. They look like a little caterpillar. Really cool, live in the rainforest, places like that. They spit silk from their mouth. Okay, they've got a set of jaws. They're avid carnivores. So what happens is we did some work on these things many years ago. If they come across a spider or something they want to eat, they'll spit silk onto it and glue it to the ground. And the work we looked at, so we actually took a spider and glued the spider to the ground with super glue, as you do, by their feet. And the spider would kick and struggle until its legs fell off. Whereas when you put an onychophoran there, it would glue its feet down and the spider would kick and struggle and then slowly go to sleep. And so it knocks it out with something that's in the system. There's now some suggestion that they have some venom in their mouth parts as well, so they just come in and just chew things up. But possibly one of the coolest things with them is there's a particular species or a series of, or a group within them that when they mate, so the males have hypodermic needles in their head, they load them up with sperm and they mate with the females through the body wall. So basically they find the female and go bang and inject the sperm through the body wall. But they are the coolest of animals. So when you go home, Google velvet worms. They just look like walking Persian carpets. They're really cool. Really cool.
Deadly unicorn worms. But
yeah, they're about as hard to find as unicorns as well. They're really cool animals. Yes, yeah. There's some in Armidale. Yep. They're really cool animals.
Just one more question. Why did you start toxology?
Why did I start toxinology? Yeah, long story to that one, but I'll make it really short. I'm really interested in seasonality in tropical animals. So if I say to you that bears go into hibernation in the wintertime, everybody goes, yeah, we know that. If I tell you that the vast majority of insects in the tropics aren't there during the dry season, they all go into hibernation, most people go, wow, that's cool. Why does that happen? It's not because it gets cold. It's all driven by rainfall, which is what originally my PhD and stuff was on, looking at why this occurs. If you walk into a funding body and go, I'd like $100,000 to find out why white-kneed crickets, which are like really big crickets, in the rainforest go into hibernation in the dry season, and the funding body goes, that's a reasonable sort of a question, but it's not going to save the world. Turn it around. Box jellyfish are only present in the north for about 6 months of the year during the wet season. Exactly the same question. Will you give me $200,000 to research the world's most venomous animal that changes the entire way we use the beachfront and actually has killed 5 people in the last 5 years? So much easier to get research funding. So much easier. And it's exactly, it's exactly the same question. It's one of the biggest issues that I see with a lot of science students nowadays is they fall in love with an animal and go, I want to research that animal. Wrong question. Work out what the question is you want to research and then find an animal or a plant or an organism that will allow you to answer those questions. Yeah. And then once you step into that field, it became really obvious really quickly that people knew a lot about what happens when people got bitten or stung by venomous animals, but we knew zip about the venom ecology of those animals. So literally overnight, I became an expert. And it was like, yes, I'll stay in this field.
All right, if we do 2 more questions, I think we need to wrap things up.
Okay, can I just go to story? I've got to remind Jamie, sorry, Jamie was one of my lecturers at university. I don't know if you remember this, Jamie, but it just harps back to onychophrans. Jamie loved onychophrans so much that in second year ecology, we went on a rainforest field trip, and he said that the first person, and we're doing invertebrate collections, the first person to find an onychophran got an HD, no questions asked.
I thought it was a carton of beer as well.
It was a carton of beer and an HD.
As it stands, I don't think anybody got an HD, and I still haven't given up a carton of beer.
Yeah, no.
So you said that to measure the toxicity of the snakes, you measured the number of mice that were killed, and it was like 20,000 or something. Obviously, you're not injecting 20,000 mice. How do you do that?
Okay, so I don't do that. But what they do is, let's say, for example, a inland taipan delivers 5 milligrams of venom. What you do is you work out what the LD50 dose is. So in other words, what the lethal dose is that you give a series of mice to kill 50% of them. And it might be 0.0001 of a milligram. So if 0.001 of a milligram kills a mouse in 5 minutes, then you times that by the number of milligrams that's in there, and it tells you the amount of mice that can die. So look, I can't remember whether it is 20,000 for inland taipans, but it's some stupid number of how many thousands of mice you can kill. So yeah.
There's one just behind you there.
You were very logical about why the Australian snakes are overkill, if you like. So they're so toxic and produce venom in such large amounts. But why is the box jellyfish so overkill?
I'm glad you like the snake one, because a lot of people don't. Okay, it's a short answer, and it's really, really simple. From the point of view of a box jellyfish, and these are active fish hunters. So if you come across a fish and you sting it and it doesn't die, you've got nothing to hang on to it, and it swims out into the deep blue briny. There's billions of litres out there, you never find it again. So you end up stinging things and watching it swim away, sting and watch it swim away. What you need to remember is the overkill for these things is only an overkill because you're looking at it's a dose response. So you need 2 or 3 metres of tentacle contact on you. When this thing catches a fish, it doesn't wrap it up in 2 metres of tentacle. It just uses a small amount, stings it and kills it. It just so happens that that venom is lethal, but you need a big dose. So a small sting on your hand, you end up with scars and it hurts and it brings tears to your eyes, but you won't die. So you need this large dose. So the overkill, it sounds like an overkill, but it's actually not. What they're trying to do is kill their prey items, which are very small, and they want them to die very quickly so they don't disappear into the deep blue.
All right, we got to wrap up the official proceedings, and I'm sure if you have a burning question, you can buy Jamie a drink or just give him compliments or something.
Or find me an onychophran.
But if you've had fun tonight, October 11, same time, same place, we're doing this again. Guys, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. One more time, let's say thanks to Jamie. And I'll see you here next month at Science in the Club.